Chapter 2361. Even this fellow knows? Ike's Red Lotus's face abruptly changed. She clenched her fists so hard that sweat appeared on them. She stared at Dustless with uncertain eyes. It's not me. It's definitely not me. Ike's Red Lotus denied it without even thinking about it. Is that so? Dustless suddenly laughed and said to himself, how about this? Let me search your memories. I refuse. Ike's Red Lotus rejected it without even thinking about it. Search my memories? It would be fine if Dustless was lying to me. However, what if he found out my hidden secrets? Secret information regarding the ghost curse equipment. Since you said so, I'll take it as you admitting that you instigated Twilight Man to provoke me. The corners of Dustless's lips curled into a bright smile. However, in Red Lotus eyes, it was the grim smile of the Grim Reaper. Let's talk things over. Ike's Red Lotus smiled awkwardly. She was not as arrogant as Twilight Man. Instead, she spoke in a submissive tone. You are so strong. Surely you won't bother with a minor character like me, right? You are right. A lion will never turn back because of the squeaking of a mouse. Dustless nodded slightly. Only then did Ike's Red Lotus calm down. However, Dustless's next words caused her heart to skip a beat. However, since you dared to trick me, you will have to pay the price, right? Hearing this, Ike's Red Lotus face froze and she asked, if you have something to say, just say it. If I can do it, I will definitely help. It's simple. Since I came here, I have yet to find a place to stay. I'll leave it to you. Secondly, Dustless suddenly stopped talking. He looked at the ghost curse equipment on Ike's Red Lotus waist. This weapon looks good. I need one. Don't try to fool me with trash. I want the ghost curse equipment of the Black Devil series. Is this it? Only then did Akira Ike let out a sigh of relief. If that was all, he could agree to Dustless's request. For him, this was not a big deal. Although casually giving Dustless the Black Devil series cursed equipment would definitely incur the wrath of his superiors, it was not a big deal to appease Dustless. Come with me. Ike's Honglian led the way. Although she was not strong, she was quite good at reading people. She knew who she could afford to offend and who she needed to curry favor with. At least you know what's good for you, kid. Otherwise, humph. Dustless gave a cold harumph. He did not want to lower himself to the same level as Ike's Red Lotus. If this brat dared to scheme again, there was no harm in crushing him to death. At this moment, in a hospital, the surroundings were already on guard. All of them were members of the Imperial Ghost Army. Their expressions were solemn, and their bodies exuded a strong murderous aura. It was as if they had all been on the battlefield. Father. In the best ward of the hospital, by twilight opened his eyes and looked at the burly man in front of him. His face suddenly turned serious. This tall man's eyes were cold and intimidating. One of his cheeks was covered by a mask. His tall and sturdy figure looked very oppressive. Just by standing there, he made people unable to breathe. He had an imposing aura without being angry. You must take care of that bastard who provoked the Bai family. Otherwise, anyone can learn from Dustless in the future. For example, Akira Ike's. Hearing this, Bai Tianli remained silent. He only glanced at Bai Twilight indifferently and asked in a deep voice, that guy defeated you? Is he very strong? Yes. Bai Twilight nodded. Thinking of the torture he experienced being imprisoned in the Tsukuyumi world for 24 hours, it was a fate worse than death. Not only is he strong, but his ability is also very special. It doesn't seem to be a curse. According to Dustless, it seems to be a ninjutsu. Bai Twilight said in detail, although I don't know what ability it is, one thing is certain, he is very strong. Trash. After a moment of silence, Bai Tianli suddenly glanced at Bai Twilight coldly. You actually didn't even figure out that guy's ability. Twilight, you really disappointed me. As soon as his voice fell, Bai Tianli turned around and left, unwilling to look at Bai Twilight. Father, you. The handsome young man on the other side slightly changed his expression. When he was about to chase after him, he was stopped by Twilight. Enough, Midnight, do you think father will sympathize with me? Stop dreaming. This handsome young man was the adopted son of the Bai family by Midnight. In father's eyes, the so-called family has long faded. Bai Twilight stared at Bai Tianli's back. He was unusually calm and there wasn't even the slightest change in his expression. It seemed that he had already expected such an outcome. You go and follow father. I suspect that he went to find Dustless. Jimu's eyes sparkled as he calmly said, Father has two choices for those who have great powers. Either he roped them in or he killed them. Not to mention that guy provoked the Ji family. By midnight was silent. In the end he nodded his head. As the adopted son of the Bai family, he knew the nature of this family too well. There was no affection between brothers and sisters. The only thing left was to make use of each other. At the same time, Ike's Hongren led Dustless to a special place. The two of them stood in front of a sealed iron door. The door was covered with various talismans. They could also hear eerie and strange screams that made them feel uncomfortable. This is the place. Opening the iron door, Ike's Hongren and Dustless entered the room. The first thing that entered their eyes was a few green-faced and fanged ghost statues. They were abnormally terrifying. These masks seemed to be able to come to life at any time, causing one to involuntarily shiver. This is it. Dustless suddenly saw a katana. Without thinking, he walked over. I think it's called a Juruamaru? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 ratings plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2362. That's it. On the other side, Akatsuki was stunned and couldn't help but be speechless. She didn't even tell Dustless the rules, but this guy directly took the ghost curse weapon. Isn't he afraid of being controlled by the ghost? Wait, there's something I want to tell you. For the sake of safety, Akatsuki said seriously, the ghost curse weapon is not a trivial matter. You want? What do I want? Without giving Akatsuki a chance to talk nonsense, Dustless interrupted her and said indifferently, do you think a ghost can control me? This joke is too tasteless. Tasteless. Hearing this, Akatsuki's mouth twitched. It turned out that such a serious question in the eyes of others was not worth mentioning. At the same time, from the moment he pulled out a Juro pill, a strong spiritual force invaded his mind. The world in front of Dustless also changed, a hazy white fog. There was no one around. It seemed that he had come to a strange world. Interesting. After a while, Dustless's mouth suddenly flashed a thought-provoking smile. Just now he clearly felt the existence of the unknown, deliberately hiding from him, and disappeared. Do you think you can run away? Dustless whispered secretly. At the same time, his observation hockey spread out. In just a moment, the hidden shadow was found. Without saying a word, Silver directly turned into an aurora and rushed over. Whoosh! The moving flash was unstoppable. The harsh sound made people cover their ears, and the figure hidden in the white fog was no exception. What kind of monster is it making such a big movement? The boy in the white fog was surprised. Looking at him, he was obviously a man, but his appearance and dress were very similar to a woman's. It was very strange. Kid, do you have a hobby of cross-dressing? The white fog surrounding the boy was dispelled, and Dustless appeared like a ghost, with his hands in his pockets, quietly looking down at the blood-eyed boy. I'm not a kid, I'm a few thousand years old. Looking at Dustless, the purple-haired young man grumbled. Also, get this straight. I'm a ghost. How can I not be afraid? Be careful or I'll swallow you. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple-haired imp made a face. Follow me. Dustless laughed involuntarily and suddenly raised a finger, looking somewhat baffled. What do you mean? The purple-haired imp, Ajiramaru, asked with a frown. Dustless's host gave off a strange feeling. You don't even know this? No wonder you're a child. Dustless shook his head and said something that made Ajiramaru fly into a rage. I only need one finger to kill you 1,000 times over. Mere human, how dare you look down on me? Hearing this, Ajiramaru looked at Dustless angrily as if he was really enraged. He bared his terrifying fangs. You don't believe me? Dustless asked indifferently. Of course I don't believe you. Ajiramaru proudly turned his head and said proudly with his back facing Dustless, I'm a ghost and you're just a human. How can you use? The words that were about to come out of his mouth stopped abruptly. Unknowingly, Dustless's thumb was already aimed at Ajiramaru's neck, embellished with a dazzling golden light, as if it could pierce Ajiramaru's throat as long as he flicked it gently. Now you believe me. Dustless smiled slightly. This world really respected the strong. After showing a little strength, this kid immediately became obedient. You brat, that move just now is not something that ordinary humans can control. Ajaramaru looked at Dustless curiously, his eyes filled with disbelief. For example, Ajaramaru's former host, Kiyoshi Shinori, was far less mysterious than Dustless. At least he didn't have such an incredible ability. I'm indeed slightly different from other humans, just like you're different from other vampires, Dustless said plainly. You know that I'm a vampire? Hearing this, Ajaramaru looked at Dustless in shock. The so-called ghost was actually a vampire that turned into a vampire after extreme blood loss. There are many things that you don't know, little brat. In short, you're my weapon from now on. In the misty white space, Wu Chen's figure disappeared after leaving behind such a sentence. What was left behind was Ajaramaru, who could only stare blankly. Was there something wrong? This is his world, and Dustless can come and go as he pleases. In the outside world, Ike's Hongren looked at Dustless nervously. As long as he didn't tame Ajaramaru, she would kill Dustless. Clang, clang, clang. Time ticked by and Dustless still didn't move. Ike's Hongren couldn't help but unsheath her tachi. What are you trying to do? Ike's Hongren. The sudden voice caused Ike's Hongren to break out in cold sweat. Raising her head, she saw Dustless silently sizing her up. I thought you can't control ghosts. Ike's Hongren wiped off the cold sweat and took a deep breath. Can't control ghosts? Are you afraid that he will take over my body? That little brat called Ajaramaru would barely be able to control me even if he was 1,000 times stronger. Dustless snorted. It's just a ghost. How are the preparations for my residence coming along? Dustless walked toward the exit. Since he had already obtained the ghost curse equipment, there was no need for him to stay here. That's a small matter. I have already informed them. From now on you can live without any worries. Ike's Hongren vowed. That's good. Our previous grudges are written off. You may leave. Dustless glanced at Ike's Hongren and left. However, after taking a few steps, a new uninvited guest appeared. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 rating plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2363. The man who suddenly appeared was burly and muscular. His huge body was several times heavier than Dustless's, and he exuded an oppressive aura. It wasn't hard to tell that this person was either rich or noble. He was someone of high status. What's the matter? Looking at the man in front of him, Dustless asked calmly, Big guy, get out of my way. What if I don't let you have the meeting? The burly man asked. Nothing will happen. Dustless was still calm as he said slowly, but when you leave you'll definitely be lying down. How dare you? Seeing Dustless's arrogance, the Emperor Ghost Army who followed him here glared at him. This is the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal, Sir Sun Tianli. Mortal, watch your tone and cooperate. It's best if you don't cause trouble for yourself. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals who followed Sun Tianli scolded loudly. So it's the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal. Hearing this, Dustless wasn't surprised at all. He maintained his composure and grinned. The King of Clowns is here. What business do you have with me? How dare you? Clang clang clang. The Emperor Ghost Army who followed Sun Tianli all drew their swords and looked at Dustless with hatred. It was as if they would join forces to cut Dustless into pieces and tear this arrogant brat apart if Sun Tianli gave the order. You've got guts. Sun Tianli looked at Dustless with interest and said in a low voice, After so many years, you're the first person who dares to speak to me like this. Do you know what kind of consequences this arrogance will bring to you? I don't know. Dustless answered simply, then asked casually, Actually, I also want to ask. Do you know what kind of consequences await those who dare to stand in my way? As Dustless's words fell, the atmosphere became extremely cold. Sun Tianli's gaze became as sharp as a knife, enough to pierce through a person's mind. Are you interested in joining the Emperor Ghost Army? After staying silent for a while, Shui Tianli realized that he still could not see through Dustless. He also understood that this guy's calmness was not an act. He could be considered a talent, so he decided to rope him in. Your son was almost killed by me, Dustless said meaningfully. Aren't you afraid that he will hate you, his father? Hate me? That's his private matter. I have no right to ask. Tai Tianli replied casually. At the same time he said nonchalantly, Furthermore, in this world human lives are as cheap as dogs. How much do you think the so-called kinship is worth? Besides, the Xi family doesn't need trash. You're quite insightful. As expected of the Supreme Ghost Army's marshal. Dustless nodded slightly. After a moment of silence, he agreed to Xi Tianli's invitation. Since I have nothing to do, I'll agree to temporarily join the Emperor Ghost Army. However, there are some things that need to be agreed upon. I don't want anyone to force me. Do you understand? Of course. Xue Tianli agreed without any hesitation. In his opinion, this was the right of the strong. Freedom was a must. Then I can't be stingy. Xue Tianli looked at Dustless with burning eyes. When he thought of the fact that he could easily kill Jimu, Xue Tianli could not help but ponder. Jimu was a lieutenant general. If Dustless was a lieutenant general, it would not be suitable for him. If that's the case, you will be the general of the Supreme Ghost Army from now on. Xue Tianli's words were shocking. Everyone was shocked. Are you kidding me? Why is there such a huge difference between people? Highness Alchemy, who was observing in the dark, suddenly felt her face twitching. Dustless had really reached the heavens in a single step. From an ordinary human to a general of the Supreme Ghost Army, his position was second only to Xue Tianli. Even Jimu was not as good as Dustless. This is the benefit of being strong. Highness Alchemy sighed. If it was someone else, they would have to endure for at least a few decades to sit in this position. They would also need to be extremely strong and have a strong background. Let's work together in the future. Xue Tianli stretched out his right hand magnanimously. It seemed that he wanted to shake Dustless's hand. However, he was instantly slapped in the face. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. I'll go back for now. Send someone to inform me if there's anything. After leaving such a sentence, Dustless swaggered away. The Supreme Ghost Army watched in cold sweat. Did this guy know the consequences of offending the Xue family? Then it's settled for now. Xue Tianli did not argue with Dustless. This bit of humiliation was nothing to him. It was not worth falling out with Dustless over this. In fact, the reason why Dustless was made the general of the Supreme Ghost Army was that Xue Tianli found that Dustless did not have the ambition to conquer Japan. This did not conflict with Xue Tianli's interests. Therefore, there was no harm in giving Dustless the position of general. It was equivalent to having a super fighter. Why not? This guy is really lucky. Some Supreme Ghost Army soldiers secretly complained. They would probably be insignificant people for the rest of their lives. On the other hand, Dustless directly became the core of the Supreme Ghost Army. Even Lieutenant General Jimu was not as good as Dustless. This is going to be interesting. If Brother Mu Ren knows about this, he will definitely jump out of his bed in anger. Xue Late Night, who had rushed over, happened to see this scene. His eyes narrowed slightly. Although he was the adopted son of the Xue family, he did not have the slightest good impression of this family. He had even discussed with Ise's Hongren to defeat this family together. Bang, bang, bang. About an hour later, as Xue Late Night had guessed, after telling Mu Ren the cause and effect of everything, this guy flew into a rage and smashed all the fruit baskets that were sent over. The originally bandaged wound was bleeding again. His irksome sworn enemy suddenly rode on his head and showed off. This was too infuriating. The speed of a salted fish turning over a new leaf was too fast. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2364. What made Jimu's people unable to accept was that Wu Qin had inexplicably become a general. What the F***ck was this? I've worked so hard for so many years to reach the rank of lieutenant general, but this brat didn't do anything big. He beat me up and almost lost half of his life. Not only did he not get punished, but he also became the only general in the Emperor Ghost Army. What made Jimu cry the most was that the person who gave the order was his father. I don't accept this, I don't accept this, I don't accept this. In the ward, the resentful roar of the Dusk people could be heard. This was too humiliating. He had been beaten half to death. Not only was Wu Qin not punished, but he had also become the general of the Emperor Ghost Army. He would be his subordinate in the future. This was even worse than eating 10 pounds of flies. Brother Twilight, it's useless to complain now. Just accept your fate. You Late Night couldn't help but sympathize with Dustless. Pucci. Unable to withstand the blow, the dark dusk man spat out a mouthful of blood. He, who could be called a man of steel, was unable to withstand a single blow and fainted. Under the lead of Ike's Red Lotus, Dustless arrived at his residence. It was a standalone villa. It wasn't luxurious. After all, the current era was too chaotic. Humanity was on the verge of collapse. It was difficult to survive, let alone enjoy a luxurious life. However, the environment was not bad. At least it was quiet. You can go back now. Dustless ordered her to leave. He turned around and entered the room. Bang. He closed the door. It seemed that he had no intention of letting Icase Red Lotus in. This guy. Icase Red Lotus frowned deeply. Everyone knew that she didn't like the Yu family. In fact, she hated them. She couldn't wait to get rid of them. However, her strength was limited and she had been hiding her ambition. At this moment, Dustless had joined the C family and became C Tianli's lackey. His relationship with Icase Korea had become subtle. They could not be considered friends, but they could not be considered enemies either. As for what would happen in the future, Icase Korea was actually quite troubled. Forget it. I'll take one step at a time. I hope this guy isn't my enemy. Otherwise, damn it. My life is really dark. Icase Red Lotus angrily complained as she helplessly left. Her back was especially hunched and bleak. Dustless no longer had the concept of time. A few years was just a blink of an eye. In any case, he was an immortal existence, so his appearance wouldn't age. But for others, it had already been a few years. In the past few years, Dustless had witnessed too many things. Those little brats of the past had grown up and become independent figures. Many of them had fought with vampires and died without leaving behind a corpse. In the past few years, Dustless viewed certain things as a passerby. He had once seen vampires feeding on human blood, killing them all, young and old. Just like harvesting leeks, humans were cut down wave after wave. Not only that, Dustless had also witnessed with his own eyes that when humans were at the brink of death, they would erupt with even greater power, even crazier and more terrifying than wild beasts. For example, those scalp-numbing human experiments. How stupid are vampires? How crazy are humans? This sentence had become Dustless's catchphrase. In a gloomy laboratory, Dustless paced back and forth. When he was bored, he would participate in vampire experiments. Fortunately, as the general of the Supreme Ghost Army, Dustless had participated in many battles against vampires in the past few years. Every time he appeared, the outcome was almost always an overwhelming victory. No matter how many vampires and high-ranking nobles came, they couldn't withstand a single blow and were all crushed. Because of this, Dustless's prestige was like the sun in the sky. The Supreme Ghost Army didn't have to know who the general was, but they had to know who Dustless was. As Dustless had slaughtered too many vampires, every time they saw him, the vampires would run for their lives in groups. This gave Dustless a rather resounding nickname, Golden Reaper. This was all because of the glint fruit. What are you doing here? In the laboratory, Ikanes Hongren frowned as she looked at Dustless. In the past few years, she found that she couldn't see through Dustless. Although he was the general of the Supreme Ghost Army, Dustless had always ignored Marshal C. Tianli's orders. He didn't even care about C. Tianli's people. There were even a few times when he slapped C. Tianli in public. Pay attention to your tone. You're just a lieutenant. Dustless casually found a place to sit down. He looked at the pills on the table and said calmly, "You're quite ambitious, kid. If the C family finds out about these experiments, do you think you can still live?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Hongren's expression froze, but it was only for a moment. "Is that so?" Dustless smiled. "Then let's start from the beginning. Hongren, why did you save Yuichiro Hayakuya? Don't tell me it was a coincidence. Freed deliberately let Yuichiro Hayakuya go and you just happened to appear at that time. What's your relationship with vampires? No, not just ordinary vampires. What's your relationship with those noble vampires?" That's all a coincidence." Ikanes Hongren quibbled with a gloomy expression. "Coincidence? I can think of it that way, but do you think the C family will agree?" Dustless asked calmly. This one sentence was a huge blow to Ikanes Hongren. If the C family found out about Yuichiro Hayakuya, they would definitely investigate. Just the surname Hayakuya alone was enough to attract the attention of the C family. Boom, boom, boom. It was also at this moment that something unexpected happened. A violent explosion resounded through the sky. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2365. Looking from afar, black smoke could be seen rising from the school not far away. Those who did not know would think that the school was on fire. However, that was not the case. The vampire used for the experiment has suddenly escaped. Students, please take shelter. The vampire used for the experiment has suddenly escaped. Students, please take shelter. The vampire used for the experiment has suddenly escaped. Students, please take shelter. Take shelter. If you are caught by the vampire, the consequences will be unimaginable. In the broadcast, the phrase "take refuge" was repeated over and over again. After hearing that the vampire had escaped, many students were scared out of their wits and hurriedly ran for their lives without caring about anything else. For ordinary humans, the vampire was the culprit behind the destruction of the world. They were simply too powerful. Troublesome things keep happening one after another. Red Lotus sighed as she heard the broadcast as well. She helplessly closed her eyes and lay on her chair. Her face revealed a deep sense of helplessness. However, Dustless suddenly tossed the black pill in his hand to Red Lotus and calmly said, "Honestly, I am quite looking forward to it." Looking forward to it? Hearing this, Red Lotus could not help but be stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously and said, "Unbelievable, you would be interested in such a boring experiment." No, you misunderstood me." Dustless shook his finger and looked at the black pill. He smiled meaningfully and said, "I have always been looking forward to the legendary Seraph of Termination. A power that can destroy the world. This is interesting." "You bastard." Hearing this, Red Lotus' pupils shrank. When she looked at Dustless again, he had disappeared. All that was left were the black pills on the table. Do not underestimate these pills. In the original work, Yuichiro Hayakuya used these pills to go berserk. The vampire has escaped? That is great. The time for me to show off my skills has finally come. Within the chaotic school, there was a figure that was different from the other students. This boy had a face full of excitement as he ran with a katana in his hand. The place he was heading to was the place where the vampire was wreaking havoc. Behind him, there was a purple-haired young lady. "You stop. You can't possibly be a match for the vampire." The girl looked anxious. She was Zhou Xian. She wanted to stop Yuichiro, but he ran too fast. She couldn't catch up to him. "Who would listen to you? Leave this vampire to me. I'll make Red Lotus see me in a new light and leave this boring school." Yuichiro didn't listen to the advice at all. He kept running with all his strength. How could he let go of such a rare opportunity? Absolutely impossible. "You ignorant brat. You have never understood the horror of vampires. How can you kill vampires with your strength? Ignorant. Stupid." Xianxia was also secretly annoyed. Red Lotus had sent him to monitor Hayakuya Yuichiro, but this brat was really too stupid. If you want to kill a vampire, you must use the ghost curse equipment. Normal weapons are useless against them. Even if the head is pierced, the vampire's abnormal life force can still survive. Furthermore, Yuichiro didn't have any ghost curse equipment. Wasn't he courting death by challenging the vampire? "Stupid, listen to me. If you want to kill a vampire, you must use the ghost curse equipment. Otherwise, even if you cut off their head, they can still survive tenaciously." Seeing Yuichiro running faster and faster, Xianxia, who was panting from exhaustion, continued to persuade him. "Only a fool would believe you." Yuichiro still didn't turn back. He stubbornly ran in the direction of the vampire. Not far away, a vampire in a prisoner's uniform was jumping around. Her scarlet eyes were jumping around, looking at the students who were running in all directions. It seemed to be looking for a target to devour. "Damn vampire, you want to suck blood? Come here." Yuichiro Hayakuya suddenly shouted, and immediately attracted the vampire's attention. "Brat, if you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." The female vampire smiled sinisterly. After licking her lips, she immediately pounced on Yuichiro. Shoo. Her speed was so fast that only a faint afterimage could be seen. So fast. Seeing this, Yuichiro was stunned. The vampire's strength was beyond his imagination. She was so fast that even he couldn't see her clearly. "Oh no." Xianxia's face changed. Looking at the blood at the corner of the female vampire's mouth, she muttered to herself, "Has she sucked blood? It seems that she has recovered her strength. Get out of the way. You are no match for her." The strength of a hungry vampire and a vampire who had sucked blood were two completely different levels. Get out of the way. Absolutely not. Yuichiro shook his head. He finally found a chance to prove his strength. If he ran away now, Red Lotus would look down on him when she heard the news. Absolutely not. This idiot. He doesn't even have the ghost curse equipment. How dare he challenge a vampire alone? Do you think everyone is as sick as Dustless? Xianxia cursed. In her impression, the only person who could defeat a vampire without the ghost curse equipment was Dustless. However, in this world there was only one Dustless, just like there was only one general in the Emperor Ghost Army. They were both unique. Go to hell. Yuichiro's eyes were ferocious. He fiercely swung his sword, aiming at the vampire's head. It was as if he was going to split her whole body. Yuichiro's hatred for vampires was engraved in his heart. If it weren't for vampires, his family wouldn't have died. If it weren't for vampires, Michael wouldn't have been pierced in the abdomen by Freed. However, what happened next caused his pupils to constrict abruptly. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2366. Clang. When he looked up, he saw that the female vampire had used only one hand to grab the blade that was coming at her. It was effortless, as if she was grabbing a fire stick. How is this possible? Yuichiro Hayakuya was stunned. He looked at the female vampire in astonishment. His heart trembled violently and his eyes became hollow. Looking at the distorted face, he felt a lingering fear. That John's 4 horsemen, that I killed in the past, was not this powerful. Yuichiro was trembling and his legs were weak. Idiot. Unexpectedly, the female vampire only smiled contemptuously. That's just a bunch of trash. I'm a vampire. Do you think a small fry like you can kill me? Are you dreaming? Idiot. Yuichiro was furious. He clenched his teeth and used all his strength to grab the blade. It was as if he was going to pull it out. Hee. The female vampire just smiled contemptuously. Her 2 fingers gently grasped the tip of the katana. In any case, even if Yuichiro tried his best, he couldn't pull out the katana. It was as if the difference in strength between them was dimensional. Get out of the way, Yuichiro. Yuichiro heard Sasuke Xiaoya's voice from behind. He turned around and saw the girl holding a huge scythe. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. She waved her slender arm and the blade was aimed at the female vampire's face. Ghost curse weapon? The female vampire's body trembled and her pupils shrunk. He felt a piercing chill. She did not hesitate and quickly retreated. Brat, you are strong. The female vampire's face turned pale. She might have died if she was a little slower. She immediately pointed at Yuichiro and said with disdain, "You are much stronger than this idiot." Idiot. Yuichiro's face was red with anger. He turned around and looked at Sasuke Xiaoya furiously. Give me your weapon. I want this guy to regret living in this world. You idiot. Sasuke Xiaoya scolded. I don't understand. Lieutenant Colonel Okamoto saw you. Don't you know? Ghost curse weapon can only be used by the host who has signed a contract. He is indeed an idiot. The female vampire also mocked Yuichiro. You're overestimating yourself. You don't even have a cursed weapon and you dare to challenge me? Do you want to die that much? Swish. 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 As soon as she finished speaking, the female vampire pounced on Yuichiro Hayakuya. It was easier to kill this guy. Xianxia had the ghost curse equipment, and her strength was obviously not something that Hayakuya Yuichiro could compare to. Quick dodge. Excellent. Sasuke Xiaoya ordered anxiously. She scolded the female vampire for being shameless. Capturing Yuichiro Hayakuya alive was equivalent to having a hostage. The chances of leaving alive would be greater. Dodge. What kind of joke was this? I'm going to kill all the vampires. These damn scum have no right to live in this world. Yuichiro Hayakuya was extremely stubborn. His eyes were bloodshot as if he was possessed by a devil. Die. Yuichiro Hayakuya held the sword with both hands and slashed at the female vampire with all his strength. However, no matter how hard he tried, the result was the same as before. Clang clang clang. The long-haired female vampire grabbed Yuichiro Hayakuya's tachi with only one hand. She sneered, "You're too weak without the ghost curse equipment. Get over here." With a sudden tug, Yuichiro Hayakuya fell over. His throat was instantly locked and he became a glorious hostage. Idiot. Xianxia saw this scene and closed her eyes in despair. Although this kid hated vampires, he knew too little about this race. I won't hold back. With a sinister smile, the female vampire bit Yuichiro Hayakuya's neck and greedily sucked his blood. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Seeing this scene, Xianxia was extremely displeased, but she was also extremely helpless. She could only watch helplessly. Once the female vampire sucked blood, her strength would recover even faster. When that happened, he didn't even know if he could deal with her. Damn it. Yuichiro Hayakuya was furious. He wanted to kill the vampire, but in the end he became her nourishment. It was extremely frustrating. Let's stop here. At this moment an indifferent voice suddenly came. This voice seemed to contain an inexplicable power. Everyone stopped what they were doing, including the female vampire who was sucking blood. They all looked in the direction of the voice at the same time. Which bastard is disturbing my meal? The female vampire was furious. She raised her head and looked over. Her pupils suddenly shrank as if she had seen a ghost. She quickly retreated as if she had seen her natural enemy. Long time no see, Xiao. Dustless glanced at Xianxia. His cold cheeks revealed a rare smile. I didn't expect that kid from back then to be so strong. He can even stand on his own. Phew. Fortunately you're here. Otherwise this kid would be finished. After she saw Wuxia make an appearance, Xiaoya heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a shy smile like a young girl, and her beautiful eyes faintly carried an expression of adoration. It's you? Dustless? Yuichiro Hayakuya, who had escaped from a disaster, looked at Dustless in surprise. Dustless was also the one who had escaped from the vampire city with him. However, what was surprising was that after a few years, Dustless's face didn't show any signs of aging. He was like a vampire who always maintained his youth. What's going on? Why is this female vampire suddenly so scared? Yuichiro Hayakuya looked at the trembling female vampire with a puzzled expression. Dustless didn't seem to do anything. Just by appearing, she was so scared that she couldn't find her bearings. Idiot. Xianxia shook her head and explained, Dustless is the only general in the Emperor Ghost Army. Do you know how strong he is? The vampires even gave him a special nickname. To the vampires, he is a man of nightmares. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2367. The Nightmare of Vampires? Hearing this, Yuichiro Hayakuya couldn't help but look at Dustless curiously. Vampires were the natural enemies of humans, but this man was known as the Nightmare of Vampires. Wasn't this contrast a little too huge? He has a famous nickname called the Golden Reaper, which was given to him by vampires. Xianxia explained softly, do you know why this female vampire is afraid of Dustless? Is it because of the nickname Golden Reaper, and the Nightmare of Vampires? Yuichiro asked subconsciously. Not really. Xianxia shook her head and nodded. It's because the one who captured this vampire was Dustless. The Emperor Ghost Army needed a lot of vampires for experiments. Sometimes, Dustless couldn't be bothered to kill ants, so he captured a lot of vampires. But it's not that exaggerated, right? Look, that female vampire is so scared that she peed her pants. Yuichiro sympathized with vampires for the first time in his life as he looked at the trembling female vampire. He looked up and saw that the female vampire was wearing a prison uniform. The crotch area was wet, and there was a choking smell. It's a little exaggerated. Seeing this, Xianxia rubbed her nose speechlessly. Let me send you on your way. Dustless stared at the female vampire and didn't make things difficult for her. He said calmly, you should know that the difference in strength between us is too big. It's impossible to escape. The female vampire didn't say anything. She just looked at Dustless silently and nodded as if she was relieved. Plang, plang, plang. Dustless didn't waste any time and walked to the female vampire as if he was taking a stroll. He pulled out the ghost curse equipment, a Juro pill. The strangest thing was that Dustless was standing in front of the female vampire. The female vampire was like a docile little lamb. She didn't resist at all, as if she had accepted her fate. Not only that, but she also took one last look at the azure sky. Her blood-red eyes flashed with nostalgia, and the corners of her mouth actually revealed a cheerful smile. She was like a lazy cat, comfortably enjoying the sunlight. It was quite charming. It was hard to imagine that a cruel vampire would have such a cute look. Don't be a vampire in your next life. Dustless pierced her heart directly, and her body started dismembering and disintegrating. How is that possible? Yuichiro Hayakuya widened his eyes in disbelief. His face was filled with shock. His impression of vampires was that they were cruel and cold-blooded. However, the vampire in front of him gave him a very different feeling before she died. She was like an innocent little girl. Thank you. The female vampire took a look at Wu Qin, and then her body disappeared completely. Thank you? Are you kidding me? This guy's brain must have been scared silly. Wu Qin killed her and even thanked her. What a moron. Hayakuya Yuichiro groaned. Today's scene had refreshed his understanding of the world. Brat, your knowledge is too shallow. Dustless glanced at Yuichiro and looked at the blue sky. In the eyes of humans, vampires are ugly devils. But in the eyes of vampires, do you know what humans are? Of course I know. Don't forget I was a livestock for vampires for a few years. Humans are their food. My family was also kept in captivity by them, but they were killed in the end. Yuichiro clenched his fists and gritted his teeth when he talked about vampires. You are right. Humans are indeed the food of vampires. But there are other aspects. Dustless sat on the bench and explained wisely, in the eyes of vampires, humans are ugly and dirty. It was because of the greed and ambition of humans that led to the destruction of the world. Vampires hate humans just like how humans hate vampires. In the end, the two races can't live without each other, but they hate each other. Sometimes, the thoughts of intelligent creatures are really hard to understand. Over the years, Dustless had experienced too much, and what he had seen was also the same. Vampires were ugly, but so were humans. It was precisely because of those crazy human experiment programs that unknown and terrible viruses were leaked out, and the world was destroyed. Humans were afraid of vampires, and vampires were afraid of humans. You bastard. Yuichiro's eyes focused on Dustless. He frowned and asked, why do you sound like you are defending vampires? Defending? No, I am just stating a fact. Remember, there is no right or wrong in this world, and there is no absolute evil. Sometimes, a saint can become a devil with just a thought. Dustless said indifferently, I am curious, how will you feel after knowing that your best friend has become a vampire? I really suspect that you are a spy sent by the vampires. Otherwise, why would that vampire thank you after you killed her? Yuichiro looked at Dustless unkindly. His words made Xiaoya's expression change. Was this guy looking for death? Idiot, don't you understand this? You and that female vampire had the same experience. I thought you could empathize with her. Who knew that you are a retard? Dustless sneered, full of disdain. Yuichiro was so angry that his old face turned black. He said angrily, what do you mean? Didn't you become a vampire's livestock? In fact, the vampire that was captured alive ended up exactly the same as you did in the past. He was kept alive as a test subject and experienced countless tortures. That's why he thanked me after I killed him. To him, being alive is torture. This is also one of the fundamental reasons why vampires hate humans. Wu Qin explained lazily. The captured vampires were all test subjects. They suffered inhuman torture and were better off dead. He killed the female vampire and ended the miserable test life. The other party was naturally grateful to Wu Qin. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2368. You're too naive and ignorant. No wonder you're always being used by others. Thinking about Yuichiro Hayakuya's past, Dustless suddenly lost interest in this guy. He could be called the most tragic protagonist, being used here and there. Even Alchemy Honrin, who he trusted the most, did not hesitate to stab him in the back at the last moment. Right, Xiaoya? Dustless suddenly stopped walking. He looked at Xiaoya and said, I met your father earlier. He asked me to bring you to see him. Father. Xiaoya couldn't help but be stunned. She looked at Dustless in shock and blurted out, what's the matter? Xiaoya was actually very unfamiliar with her father, Tai Tianli. You know, I'm not interested in knowing about your father. Dustless shook his head and looked at Xiaoya meaningfully. He dragged out his tone and said, your father. No, you should know what kind of family the Tai family is, right? I personally don't think it's a good thing for your father to suddenly look for you. So, I'm only responsible for passing the message to you. If you're determined to leave, I won't stop you. What kind of family was the Tai family? In Dustless's words, it was rotten to the core. This family didn't have the slightest bit of emotion to speak of. There were only interests in using and being used. After a moment of silence, Xiaoya said resolutely, I want to meet my father. Is that so? Then don't regret it. Scope. That rotten old man called us over. I'm also curious about what kind of rotten idea he has. Tai Tianli was the only one sitting in the dull meeting room. His gaze was deep as he stared at the map. This was a world map. The whole world was in front of him. However, Tai Tianli's gaze was only focused on a small piece of land in Japan. He was old and had no interest in conquering the world and reviving mankind. He only wanted to protect his own power. Knock, knock, knock. After some time, the door of the meeting room suddenly opened. Dustless and Xiaoya walked in without greeting. We haven't seen each other for a long time. No, it seems like I'm getting old. After looking at Dustless for a while, Yun Tianli discovered with envy that Dustless still looked the same as when they first met. His face hadn't aged at all. The same cold eyes, the same coat, the same temperament, the same. The only difference was that Si Tianli was already old. However, looking at Dustless's young appearance, Yun Tianli did not feel the slightest bit of jealousy. All that remained was pure pride. He was very proud that he had not made an enemy out of Dustless back then. He had only roped him in and they had become friends. Dustless's terrifying strength was the guarantee of Yun Tianli's authority. As long as he could rope in Dustless, he knew that he would be immortal. Xiaoya, you're here. Have a seat. Ran Tianli smiled warmly, dazzling Ran Xiaoya. In her impression, her father had always been cold and harsh. He treated everyone coldly, including a woman like her. Since when did he become so gentle? Ran Xiaoya expressed her confusion. We've known each other for many years. Just say what you want. There's no need to beat around the bush. You know that I don't like to be long-winded, Dustless said impatiently. You're still the same as before. Yun Tianli nodded when he heard this. He was not surprised at all. He glanced at Ran Xiaoya a few more times before saying sternly, I want to betroth Xiaoya to you. The two of you are a match made in heaven. If the two of you get together, wait. Before Yun Tianli could continue, Dustless immediately stood up. He looked at Yun Tianli in shock and picked his ear. Did I hear wrong? You want to betroth Xiaoya to me? Father. Let alone Dustless, even Ran Xiaoya looked at Yun Tianli in shock. You heard right. Yun Tianli looked into Dustless's eyes and said firmly, after the two of you get together, you will definitely give birth to the most outstanding offspring. My Yun family will also be passed down forever and will not become a part of history. The latter part is your true motive, right? To let the Yun family pass down forever. Wuxian looked at Si Tianli, who had a fanatical look in his eyes and ruthlessly dampened his enthusiasm. Nothing can be eternal and immortal. After a long time, everything will decay. You're right, but that's not important to me. Yun Tianli smiled and said seriously, I only cherish what's in front of me. As long as I'm still alive, it'll be fine as long as the Yun family can last forever. Old man, to put it bluntly, this is for your own selfish interests. You're just protecting your rights. Dustless sneered. After working with this old man for a few years, he knew his motive. He didn't have any ambitions and only wanted to protect his rights. As for Ran Xiaoya, she remained silent and didn't have the right to interrupt. However, she felt extremely cold in her heart. She lifted her head and looked at her father. This man was so heartless. In order to protect his rights, he didn't mind giving her away. He didn't even bat an eyelid. Instead of calling her a daughter, she was more like a valuable commodity. However, Ran Xiaoya understood that the Yun family was such a cruel family. For example, the adopted son of the Yun family, Yun Late Night, had Yun Zhenzhou as his fiancée. In order to give birth to outstanding offspring, the Yun family's partners were all giants among men. Dustless was the strongest among the strong. In Yun Tianli's eyes, he was the most suitable stud horse to give birth to the Yun family's next generation. Most importantly, once he had this son-in-law, he wouldn't have to worry about his rights anymore. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2369. What's your answer? Dustless. Si Tianli gazed at Dustless longingly. He was determined to have Dustless. With such a super-nuclear weapon in his hands, no one could threaten him in the future. It wasn't just Ran Tianli. Even Ran Xiaoya couldn't take her eyes off Wu Qin. Although there was a huge age gap between the two, Wu Qin was very special. His appearance wouldn't age. On the surface he looked like he was in his early 20s. He was extremely young. Secondly, Ran Xiaoya was looking forward to it. Of course she was also repulsed. Could be said that she was conflicted. Her father had given her away just like that. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to accept it. It was worth mentioning that Dustless's legend of invincibility had spread far and wide. Ran Xiaoya was also one of Dustless's admirers. To put it in a more fashionable way, she was a fan. She admired Dustless a lot. About that, Dustless had a headache and was in a difficult position. He really treated Ran Xiaoya as a junior. After all, he watched her grow up and taught her a lot of fighting moves. Wasn't it like an old cow eating young grass if she were to be betrothed to him? Although Dustless didn't think that he was old. If he were to reject Ran Xiaoya, this innocent little girl would definitely be devastated. For a moment he was in a dilemma and didn't know what to do. We'll talk about it in the future. Xiaoya is too young. Dustless pondered for a moment before giving an ambiguous answer. It was a rejection and an agreement at the same time. No one could guess what he was thinking. Is that so? Since you've decided, I won't interfere. Si Tianli couldn't help but feel disappointed. After working with Dustless for a few years, he knew that he couldn't force him. Chui Xiaoya looked at Dustless. Compared to before, her gaze was rather dim. She looked at Dustless's cold eyes and felt rather bitter inside. When she was mentioned, Dustless's eyes were as calm as still water. Clearly he was not interested in her. Xiaoya, you can leave first. I have something to discuss with Dustless. Waving his hand, Tai Tianli's tone became much colder. That emotionless tone was as if he was talking to an abandoned child. What a cold-blooded old man. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head. After all, this was someone else's family matter and he had no right to speak. Lan Xiaoya did not say anything, leaving dejectedly. If you have something to say, say it. Dustless casually sat down and crossed his legs. He glanced at Si Tianli and said, "It's about your son Jimu, right? Not bad." Si Tianli's gaze suddenly turned incomparably cold. He said with hatred, "That brat actually did that kind of experiment behind my back. That damn bastard, is he trying to usurp the throne?" "You know about it?" Dustless wasn't surprised. After all, he was the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal, so he naturally knew about certain things. The blazing angel of termination. Si Tianli took a deep breath and said coldly, "But don't be happy too early. That son of mine is ambitious and wants to replace me. That's something everyone knows. Many people in the Emperor Ghost Army have sided with him, but I've been feigning ignorance and couldn't be bothered to deal with him." "Aren't you worried that he'll kill his father?" Dustless looked into Si Tianli's eyes and said meaningfully, "You don't need me to say it. As long as there's a suitable opportunity, he'll kill you." Sounded crazy, but that was the truth. In this ugly world, anything could happen. Moreover, Jimu was ambitious and wanted to lead the Emperor Ghost Army to rule the world. First of all, Si Tianli, who had no intention of competing for hegemony, was his biggest obstacle. It was only a matter of time before father and son met on the battlefield. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that Si Tianli, this cunning old fart, had guessed correctly. In the original work, Jimu had already planned to kill him and replace him. Don't be happy too early. I understand the grudge between you and Jimu. If I die, do you think he'll let you go?" Si Tianli snorted. His meaning was very simple. He hoped that Dustless would help him. "Of course I know he won't let me go." Dustless didn't deny it and only nodded. He. Si Tianli suddenly laughed. "The seraph of termination, that's something that can destroy the world. Aren't you afraid?" Hearing this, Dustless only looked at Si Tianli quietly, raised two fingers and corrected him, "You're wrong about two things. Regarding the seraph of termination, I know its essence better than you. Secondly, you said I'm afraid? If you can understand it this way, it can only mean that you're too ignorant." The essence of the seraph of termination? Si Tianli frowned deeply. Hearing Dustless's words, it seemed that there was more to it. "That's right. The essence of the seraph of termination isn't to destroy. Dustless's eyes were cold as he said in a deep voice, "The essence of this plan is actually to revive the dead, so it's called a taboo experiment. Do you still remember the huge disaster a few years ago? It's actually because some people touched the taboo and touched the seraph of termination, reviving the dead. Because of this, some narrow-minded gods got angry and this world ushered in the end. There's such a secret." Si Tianli was stunned and felt that his brain wasn't enough to process it. He looked at Dustless without moving. Reviving the dead? Why does it sound like a fairy tale? It sounds unbelievable, but it's the truth. Dustless said with great certainty. As a transmigrator, he was naturally familiar with these secrets. Moreover, the main culprit of the destruction of the world was Ikanes Hanren. He touched the taboo and revived the dead. As a result, the gods got angry and this world collapsed. The essence of the Seraph project was the content of a manga. Those who haven't read it can go take a look. It's pretty good. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2370. Can I revive others? Tai Tianli's throat choked. Dustless could clearly feel that this guy's breathing had quickened. He was probably yearning for the end of the Blazing Angel project. Are you hoping that others will revive you after you die? Dustless stared straight at Tai Tianli and said in disdain, "Who will revive you? Are you hoping that your son will revive you? Stop dreaming." Tai Tianli was speechless after hearing Dustless's words. Most people wanted him to die, so how could they revive him? Also, you seem to have forgotten the cause and effect. Even if you are really revived, a virus like the one from a few years ago will sweep across the world again. We might have to go through another destruction. What do you think will exist in the world after another destruction? Dustless asked casually, which made Tai Tianli speechless. The world was in a mess now and the human race could go extinct at any time. If they were to experience another round of destruction, the human race would be completely finished. Moreover, just like what Dustless said, no one would be willing to revive him. Sigh. Tai Tianli let out a long sigh. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He lowered his head like a defeated rooster. Dustless didn't say anything when he saw this. He turned and left. Still here. Dustless saw Xianxia standing silently just as he walked out. He rubbed the girl's head subconsciously. You don't have to care about what your father said. He is a cold-blooded animal. Not only does he treat you, but he treats your brother and the rest of the Tai family the same way. I know. Xianxia nodded gently. Sco. Dustless nodded and didn't say anything. In fact, there wasn't much to say. Xiaoya. Seeing Dustless and Xiaoya, Hayakuya Yuichiro suddenly ran over. Not only him but a few of his companions also ran over. Zaoi Yuichiro, Jun Tsukasa. Dustless stared at the two of them. He only took a few more glances and didn't pay attention to them anymore. No matter how great their achievements were in the future, they were nothing now. There was nothing worth thinking about. But this kid. Dustless suddenly looked towards Jun Yuesher's side. He clearly remembered that his sister Jun Yuesher had been secretly experimented on by the Emperor Ghost Army. In the end, she had become the Seraph of Termination. You better stay away from Xiaoya. Seeing Dustless and Xiaoya standing there, the protective Yuichiro immediately pulled Xiaoya away. Because of what Dustless had said before, Yuichiro had already labeled him as a dangerous and unreliable person in his heart. Xiaoya is our companion and family. Yuichiro Hayakuya said coldly, feeling an indescribable hatred for Dustless. At the same time, Junyu Shifeng, Zainu, Ichiya and Yuichiro Hayakuya stood on the same side, secretly protecting Xiaoya. Hisk. Seeing this, Dustless smacked his lips and said with a smile, I remember that you guys never paid attention to teamwork. Why did you guys suddenly change so fast? Is the Red Lotus group yours? But, then Dustless suddenly changed the topic and said flatly, you guys are worrying about nothing here, like caring about other people, like you. Looking at Jun Yuesher's side, Dustless said sarcastically, maybe she is experiencing great pain now. As an idiot brother, you are still standing here foolishly. Also, don't trust others, including Red Lotus. You guys are just chess pieces. If you are sowing discord. Yuichiro Hayakuya retorted. In his heart he actually trusted Red Lotus. What a hopeless idiot. Dustless was too lazy to continue talking nonsense. He turned around and left. He still had other things to deal with. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2371. After all, Dustless had massacred too many vampires. The nickname Golden Reaper was not for show. It was enough to deter too many vampires. Many of them would even run away after hearing the name Dustless. It was hard to imagine that vampires would fear a human to such an extent. This guy is very strange. You guys should be careful in the future. Looking at Dustless's back, Yuichiro did not dare to be careless. Back then he and Dustless had escaped from the vampire city together. He had witnessed the terrifying strength of Dustless with his own eyes. In the blink of an eye he had killed 6 or 7 vampires. His strength was beyond imagination. My sister. Junyuzo looked at Dustless's back in a daze. The words spoken by Dustless had affected him greatly. Junyuzo, don't listen to that guy's nonsense. How could Red Lotus harm your sister? You're overthinking it, Yuichiro advised. He had 100% trust in Red Lotus. He explained, that guy is just trying to drive a wedge between us. In the vampire city, Dustless was strolling around. He did not bother to hide and appeared calmly in front of the vampires. It was as if he was taking a stroll in the afternoon. Am I seeing things? A human is walking around in front of us. You must be dreaming. Damn human, are you tired of living? That's not right. This human doesn't look like a domestic animal. Look, he's not wearing a domestic animal uniform. The vampires who saw Dustless were dumbfounded. Since when did a human dare to be so arrogant? He actually dared to walk around in front of them. Did he think that they were all blind? No matter what, let's kill him together. He's just a domestic animal. A few of the patrolling vampires looked at each other and quickly surrounded Dustless. Every one of them was holding a sharp weapon in their hands. Their expressions were ferocious and they revealed their sharp fangs. It was quite scary. It was as if they wanted to swallow Dustless alive. Get out of my way, you bastards. Dustless, who was surrounded, opened his mouth and said slowly, I was invited by your queen. She begged me to give you vampires a way out and not send yourselves to death. Human, have you gone mad? All the vampires snorted disdainfully. How could their queen flirt with Dustless, a human? What invitation? Bullsh *T. Do it, kill him. The few vampires did not waste any more words and all drew their swords to slash at him. If you want to die, then I won't be polite. Dustless pulled out a Juromaru, and with a light wave, a terrifying black slash swept out. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. Several vampires didn't even have the chance to scream before they were killed in the blink of an eye. It had been a few years since Dustless had obtained a churro pill. He was already able to control it flexibly. He was invincible. He had killed many aristocratic progenitors. Thud, 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 thud. Dustless left without the slightest reluctance. Before he came, Klulu had asked Dustless to sneak into the city of vampires secretly. He didn't even think about it and decisively refused. Sneak in like a rat? Not a chance. They were just vampires. As Dustless gradually infiltrated deeper into the heart of the city, more and more vampires discovered him. Seeing a human jumping in front of them, many vampires were enraged. They ran over with swords wanting to cut Dustless into pieces. A domestic animal suddenly swaggered in front of its master. All the vampires were infuriated, but sadly the vampires who provoked Dustless were all killed in seconds without exception. Humans, stop right there. The brightly lit hall was quite familiar. Dustless had been here before and knew that he wasn't far from Klulu's palace. But at this time a roadblock blocked his way. This person was slightly different from the other vampires. He had blue eyes that shone like gems. His blonde hair was dazzling under the light. It was worth mentioning that this young man looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. He had a calm and steady aura, completely different from the vampires he encountered before. He was much stronger. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. When Dustless saw him, the image of a blonde young man appeared in his mind. Michael of the 100 Knights? Dustless's lips curled up. He looked at the cold young man and teased, What's so complicated about changing from a human to a vampire? Express your feelings, young man. You know me. Hearing this, 100 Knights, Michael's cold little face was obviously stunned. He coldly asked, Human, who are you? This changes really fast. Every time you say human. Didn't you hate vampires in the past? Now that you've become a vampire, your stance has changed? Little brat, your will is really not firm. But it's undeniable that humans are really annoying sometimes. Dustless spoke frankly. Soon after, he asked faintly, whose blood did you drink to become a vampire? You know, quite a lot. 100 Nights. Michael frowned as he looked at Dustless. He felt that the person in front of him was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. Playing 100 Nights. Michael was too lazy to talk nonsense. He unsheathed his sword. After becoming a vampire for a few years, he had completely changed. He started to hate the human race. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 100 Nights. Michael turned into a gust of wind and rushed over. The large sword in his hand slashed towards Dustless's head without hesitation. He was full of vigor and didn't show any mercy. Clang, clang, clang. A series of explosions sounded and the blade's attack stopped. Without a doubt, Dustless received the attack. His method was very simple. He directly grabbed Michael's sword. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2372. 100 Nights. Michael looked at Dustless in a daze. Those two fingers were like two giant fingers that could reach the sky. They were tightly clamping Michael's sword, forcing him to be unable to move. Damn it! 100 Nights. Michael was furious. He pulled out the sword with both hands. The veins on his arms were bulging. He wanted to pull it out and cut this hateful face into pieces. So weak. After dilly-dallying for a long time, 100 Nights. Michael still couldn't move Dustless. It seems like the person who turned you into a vampire wasn't Clulu. If you drank her blood, your strength wouldn't be so weak. Let me guess who it is. Dustless stared at 100 Nights. Michael's face for a few times. Suddenly he thought of a man with a wicked taste. He smiled and asked, is it the seventh ancestor Freed? Bastard. This name seemed to have touched 100 Nights. Michael's heartstrings. His face suddenly turned sinister. He raised his right leg and kicked Dustless. You're asking for trouble. Dustless snorted. Looking at the side leg that was flying towards him, he slapped it. Bang. Compared to Dustless, 100 Nights. Michael's strength was like a little lamb. He was easily sent flying. He fell more than 10 meters away. His face was red and swollen. You still don't remember who I am? Looking at 100 Nights. Michael, who was lying on the ground, Dustless said calmly, a few years ago I walked out of here openly. It was also when 100 Nights Yichiro escaped from here. It's you. After being reminded by Dustless, 100 Nights. Michael suddenly remembered. His eyes were like torches as he looked at Dustless. He asked excitedly, Yichiro, how are you? Are you injured? That brat. Dustless didn't hide anything and replied bluntly, that brat is a perfect experimental subject. How do you think he will be? You dirty, ugly human, I want you to pay with your life. Hearing this, 100 Nights. Michael immediately went berserk. His eyes were bright red and filled with a raging light. His bloodthirsty killing intent was like a wild beast that wanted to devour Dustless. Die. Holding the great sword with both hands, 100 Nights. Michael quickly attacked, stabbing towards Dustless's abdomen. This ferocious sword pierced through Dustless's abdomen, right in the middle of his heart. However, Michael of the 100 Nights wasn't happy at all. The wound he pierced emitted a faint golden light, but no blood flowed out. Clearly this move had no effect on Dustless. Brat, do you think that I used that kid as a test subject? Dustless lowered his head to look at the malevolent 100 Nights. Michael and said with contempt, in my eyes, no matter what kind of monster he becomes in the future, he's just a little brat that's hard to look at. You're not allowed to talk about Jewel like that. 100 Nights. Michael roared with an ashen face. Compared to before, his anger had weakened a lot. Hearing that Dustless didn't have any intention of doing anything to him, he was slightly relieved. Get lost, don't block my way. Dustless was too lazy to continue talking nonsense with 100 Nights. Michael. His body directly brushed past him and he walked straight into the depths of the corridor. Wait, I haven't allowed you to leave yet. I still want to ask about Jewel. 100 Nights. Michael leaped and blocked in front of Dustless like a wall. However, Dustless still didn't care about him and continued to walk away, treating 100 Nights. Michael as air. You dare to ignore me? 100 Nights Michael was slightly angry. A mere human dared to look down on him. Unforgivable. Swish swish swish. 100 Nights Michael leaped again and blocked in front of Dustless, but this time he wasn't as lucky as before. Breaking Dao level 90. The spiritual pressure in Dustless's body boiled as he glanced at 100 Nights Michael. You're really too much of an eyesore. Black coffin. All of a sudden, a black crescent moon appeared in the void around 100 Nights Michael. It was so sharp that it could easily cut apart a palace. Poochie. 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 In an instant 100 Nights Michael suffered a fatal injury. The black blade penetrated his body and tore his flesh and bones into pieces. A perfectly fine person was cut into 8 pieces in the blink of an eye. This is just a lesson for blocking my way. The next time you dare to block me, it won't be as simple as being cut into 8 pieces. I will definitely not use such a gentle method in the future. Dustless didn't kill him. The vitality and body structure of a vampire were very special. Even if he was cut into pieces, he could still recover as long as someone helped him. In Klulu's palace. That guy really knows how to cause trouble. Klulu crossed her legs and sat lazily on the throne. She tilted her head and looked like she had a headache. Just a moment ago she received the news of the Golden Reaper, which was Dustless's invasion. She even got rid of a few hundred vampires. 'Cause trouble for you? This should be the other way around. You suddenly called me over. I always feel that you're causing trouble for me. Above Klulu's head, groups of light gathered and flashed into Dustless's body. He looked at Klulu with a playful gaze and teased, "My cute livestock, why did you call me over?" Livestock. Hearing this, Klulu's face trembled a few times. As the queen of vampires, she was actually called a livestock by Dustless. It was a great humiliation. But sadly, Klulu couldn't beat Dustless. Even if she was unhappy, she could only endure it. You actually, 10,000 celestial attraction. A ferocious gravitational force exploded and Klulu, who was sitting on the throne, was instantly pulled over. Dustless raised his arm and mercilessly slapped her perky buttocks. If I don't hit you for 3 days, you want to climb the roof and destroy the tiles? Have you forgotten what I told you before? When you see me, you have to call me Master. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2373. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you, you bastard. Klulu, who was being held by Dustless, felt a stinging pain coming from her butt. Her face turned red and at the same time, an unprecedented feeling spread throughout her body, followed by a huge burst of anger. As the queen of the vampires, she was spanked by a human again and again. How could she have any face left? It was even worse than killing Klulu. As the saying goes, a gentleman prefers death to humiliation. However, Dustless didn't buy it. He used such a crazy method to trample on Klulu's dignity. She was about to go crazy. You still dare to stare at me? Lowering his head, he found that Klulu was staring at him with eyes that wanted to eat him alive. Dustless smiled and said, "Well, it seems that you like to play more interesting and exciting things. Klulu, why don't we change the pattern, tie you to a telephone pole, take off your clothes and find dozens of—" Enough, I was wrong, okay? Dustless was so shameless that Klulu could only lower her head like a loser admitting defeat. She was extremely unwilling to accept this and respectfully called out, "Master." That's more like it. Dustless smiled proudly and let go of Klulu. He lazily sat on her throne and took out a bottle of wine and a wine glass from nowhere. He ordered Klulu arrogantly, "Fill it to the brim." This bastard wants me to pour wine? Too arrogant. Klulu exploded in anger. She was about to reject Dustless, but she saw him looking at her with a smile. Her body suddenly trembled. Even if she was unhappy, she could only follow Dustless's order. The red liquid was poured into the golden wine cup. The fragrance assailed the nostrils. Wuxian picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. Then he asked unhurriedly, "My little livestock, why did you call your master? Are you going to deal with the humans?" "That's good, I've been annoyed with those idiots for a long time." "You're also a human, right? Don't you have any sympathy? How can you watch your own race being destroyed without doing anything?" Crew rolled his eyes and cursed speechlessly. The human race was about to be destroyed. Why was this guy still gloating? "Little girl, your knowledge is too shallow. Dustless leaned lazily on the throne and said carelessly, "My own race? Since when were those humans my race? Just because I'm human? This logic is really unflattering. Do what you need to do. I won't interfere," Dustless said indifferently. Then his body turned into a photon and a large amount of light floated out. It seemed like he was about to leave. "Don't worry, I still have something to say," Kalyalu shouted to stop him. The light floating around Dustless's body slowly receded, and his body that was about to disappear reappeared. "Don't you want to ask what kind of relationship I have with Ice Korea?" Seeing Dustless's casual attitude as if he didn't care about anything, Kalyalu was a little unhappy. "What's wrong with this guy? Isn't he afraid that I'll harm him? This has something to do with me?" Dustless looked at Kalyalu with an indifferent expression and said very simply, "In the end, it's just you playing a boring game with a few cats and dogs. You don't have to care about my feelings, just do what you need to do." "Aren't you saying it too simply?" Kalyalu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The plan she was talking about was the end of the Blazing Angel project. But when it came to Dustless, it became a boring game. That is something that can destroy the world. With a straight face, Kalyalu looked at Dustless seriously. "Furthermore, the world might collapse again if you don't do it right. Aren't you afraid? What does it have to do with me?" Dustless couldn't be bothered to listen to Kalyalu's nagging and interrupted her. His eyes were filled with endless light. "What does the life and death of the world have to do with me? He wasn't the God that Christians believed in. He wasn't great enough to love the world, nor was he the Buddha in the eyes of Buddhists. How boring would it be to save the world? Dustless wouldn't do it. You and Ice Korea are working together, right?" After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly said, "You shouldn't say it like that. Let's be more specific. You and Red Lotus's girlfriend, Kasumi Hiru, are in a cooperative relationship. But that guy seems to have become a ghost. Now he seems to be lodging in Ike's Red Lotus's ghost curse weapon. You even know this?" Kalyalu's mouth opened wide in shock. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. Her heart felt like it was going through a storm and couldn't calm down for a long time. Looking at his clear eyes, she suddenly felt scared. This kind of secret cooperation was only known by 3 people. Kalyalu herself, Ice Korea herself, and Ice Korea. Where did Dustless get this information? Who do you want to resurrect with that kind of thing? Dustless stared at Kalyalu and said bluntly, "The essence of the end of the Blazing Angel project is to resurrect the dead. You want to resurrect someone in order to destroy the world? To be honest, I am very curious." This. Kalyalu was silent. She didn't know how to face Dustless. This guy was too mysterious. Dustless knew all the secrets that should be known by heaven and earth. "Yeah, I am bored. Let me guess." Dustless closed his eyes and remained silent for a long time. Kalyalu also looked over and curiously looked at Dustless. She really didn't know where this guy got the ability to predict the future. "You want to resurrect Yashira Tsapersi, right?" "No, that was his name 1,000 years ago. Now that he has turned into a ghost, his name is Ajiramaru," Wuxian said with a smile. His tone was light, but this short sentence made Kululu very tired. His whole body was in a bad state. "Are you really human?" Kalyalu's beautiful eyes widened several times. She looked at Dustless's naughty smile and then realized something. She quickly changed her words. "It is Master. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2374. At this moment, Krulu felt like dying. The high and mighty vampire queen was actually forced into such a sorry state by a human. She even had to address a human as her master. The reputation of the vampires was completely lost by her. It was worth mentioning that Krulu was the 3rd ancestor of the vampires, a true noble. But then again, where did this guy find out about these secrets? Did Akira Ikase tell him? That's impossible. Akira Ikase doesn't even know about my brother's matters. This is too strange. Her beautiful eyes stared at Dustless without moving. Krulu found that she couldn't see through Dustless anymore. This guy was full of secrets. The more she looked at him, the more she couldn't help but fall in love with him. If you stare at me like that, I'll feel embarrassed." Dustless's annoying voice fell into Krulu's ears. "I know that I'm ridiculously handsome. It's normal for you to fall in love with me. But no matter what, you're still the vampire queen. Little brat, you need to be more reserved." Krulu's pretty face turned black. He was furious. Can't this guy be more serious? But there's one thing I need to remind you. Dustless looked at Krulu and warned, you also know that I'm the general of the Emperor Ghost Army. I know better than you what kind of person Akira Icase is. Cooperating with her is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. Don't get bitten in the back. Moreover, you are the queen of the vampires. If those nobles find out. No, it seems that they already know that Fried knows that you are keeping the Seraph of Termination in captivity. Dustless warned earnestly. That Fried was not a good person. Don't worry. I've already taught him a lesson. That guy won't dare to talk nonsense unless he doesn't want to live anymore. Krulu sneered. You think too highly of yourself. At the same time, you've also underestimated that man. Dustless shook his head and explained, do you understand? A poisonous snake will only release its precious venom when it's sure that it has its prey. And Dustless suddenly took out his ghost-cursed weapon. The green blade made the weapon look very nice. This is my ghost-cursed weapon. Do you know what it's called? When Crew heard this, his gaze was also drawn over. When he saw the straight saber, for some reason his emotions trembled. He felt a strange sense of nostalgia. Looking at Krulu's expression, Dustless faintly smiled and explained, his name is Ajiramaru. Ah, Yujun, who beat you up like this? On the other side, Fried also discovered that 100 Knights Michael's body had been chopped into 8 pieces. His body had been cut into several pieces. Fortunately, the person who chopped him up didn't kill him, so his body could still be pieced back together. 100 Knights Michael opened his eyes and looked at Fried's bewitching face. He was extremely conflicted. Without a doubt, Fried had killed all of his family members apart from Yuichiro Hayakuya. Originally, both sides were irreconcilable enemies, but because of Fried, Roland had become a vampire. Although Fried had only used Roland, in a way Fried had saved Roland's life. Therefore, every time he saw Fried, 100 Knights Michael felt extremely helpless. I'm curious. What kind of person beat you up like this? In this city of vampires, it seems that only Krulu can do this. How did you offend him? Fried put 100 Knights Michael's body back together, blinked his eyes and asked curiously. It's not him. 100 Knights Michael's face was gloomy. He opened his mouth and spat out a person that made Fried's expression change drastically. It's Dustless, the guy with the nickname, Golden Reaper. So it's him. Hearing this, Fried's careless face suddenly froze. Obviously, he was also extremely apprehensive of Dustless. Don't say too much about this matter. Only the two of us can understand. 100 Knights Michael frowned and said in a deep voice, if we tell the other upper ancestors, there will definitely be someone stronger to deal with Dustless. Even Krulu will be killed. That guy has an inextricable relationship with Krulu. Haven't you always wanted the ruling power of Japan? You're right. Fried nodded undeniably. He liked Krulu's power. However, before this, you seem to have forgotten an important matter, Michael. Important matter. Hearing this, 100 Knights Michael was rather confused. He didn't understand what this guy was talking about. No matter how wonderful something is, you have to be alive to enjoy it. Do you think that the two of us can still live after offending Krulu? Moreover, that guy has an even more terrifying general of the Emperor Ghost Army behind him. His strength is far beyond Krulu's. Speaking of this, Fried broke out in cold sweat. His face was filled with apprehension. The scene of him being crushed by Dustless back then was unforgettable. It was just a glance, but it was like a startled swan that scared him to the point that he lost all his fighting strength. It might be laughable to say that the dignified seventh ancestor was so frightened by a mere human that he almost peed his pants. However, this was the undeniable truth. That was why Fried had been obedient all these years. He knew that Dustless and Krulu had some kind of relationship, but he didn't dare to announce it. Perhaps if he announced it, Krulu would be finished. However, he would definitely end up in a worse state than Krulu. Looking at Fried's solemn expression, Michael of 100 Knights couldn't help but feel curious. Just what kind of encounter did Fried experience to frighten him to such an extent? He didn't dare to cross the line. This wasn't like him at all. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2375. Michael couldn't help but stare blankly at Fried in front of him. He was scared out of his wits by Dustless. Dustless was like a nightmare to him. The calm and confident Fried in the past seemed to be an act. And now, this timid Fried had refreshed Michael's understanding of him as if this was the real him. All in all, you can provoke anyone, but provoking Dustless is the same as courting death. Fried emphasized, warning Michael not to act rashly. He knew how terrifying Dustless was. Not to mention Michael, even Klulu as the third ancestor, didn't dare to challenge Dustless. In fact, she was even humble in front of Dustless. Could it be? Suddenly recalling something, Fried asked in a deep voice, "Did you offend that guy? That's why he cut you into 8 pieces?" "That's right. I did provoke him." Michael nodded slightly. "You've misunderstood." Fried shook his head. He didn't mean to hurt Michael's feelings. "If you really provoked him, I can tell you clearly that all the vampires in this city will be buried with you." At the same time passed quickly. Dustless and Klulu were in dead silence. "You tamed this cursed weapon?" Klulu's expression was extremely complicated. She stared at the green saber in front of her. No wonder she felt an inexplicable connection with it. It turned out that this was Ajurumaru, her elder brother. "He's already a ghost now." Dustless added, "You should know what a ghost is, right? When vampires are deprived of blood, they will degenerate into ghosts. Your elder brother is such an existence now. In a sense, he isn't dead." Klulu didn't deny it. She just stood there quietly. Dustless's words were too big and she needed time to digest them. "Actually, you don't have anything to worry about. Besides, it's useless for you to worry." Dustless continued, "This is fate. Your elder brother was turned into a vampire, and from a vampire he became a ghost. Only when he came to me can he be at peace." It was worth mentioning that many vampires were originally humans. For example, Michael turned into a vampire after drinking the blood of other vampires. Some ancestor vampires were also humans at first, but after drinking the blood of superior vampires, they evolved into vampires. In short, I've said all that needs to be said. What you do next is up to you. Dustless explained casually, "But be careful of Akira's Akira." No matter what kind of secret plan Kurulu and Icase Red Lotus had, Dustless was too lazy to poke his nose into it. As long as it didn't hinder him, he was fine with it. He just wanted to live a carefree life. Those words just now could be considered as a warning to Kurulu. After leaving Klulu, Dustless didn't rush back to the King Ghost Army's territory. Instead, he wandered around the ruined city with nothing to do. Ever since the large-scale destruction of the human race, the once bustling cities had now become rotting scrap metal. There were abandoned buildings everywhere, dilapidated beyond repair. What a killjoy. Dustless shook his head slightly. His heart couldn't help but feel empty. Seemed like he was the only one in this huge city. Even if there were people, they were the vampires and John's 4 horsemen. It was worth mentioning that John's 4 horsemen seemed to have been cursed by God. They didn't attack vampires but humans instead. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, a building not far away suddenly collapsed. Dustless frowned. He could vaguely hear a clang, clang, clang sound. After living in this world for many years, Dustless knew that it was the sound of weapons scraping against each other. Interesting. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Out of curiosity, Wuxia strode over. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! In an underground ruin, several members of the King Ghost Army were surrounded. This group of people looked quite miserable. Some of them were sweating profusely. Looking carefully, they were surrounded by vampires. They were like turtles in a jar. Dustless recognized these people. They were Xiaoya's team. "You bastard, I told you not to save people so easily. Why didn't you listen to my orders?" The blonde girl with a ponytail asked angrily. She was called Mitsuya. She was scolding Hayakuya Yuichiro angrily. Just now their team had saved a little girl. Because of that, they were surrounded. The little girl had lied. There were supposed to be 7 vampires, but she said there were 6. As a result, Xiaoya's team was surrounded. It's useless for you to say anything now. We're surrounded," Hayakuya Yuichiro said with a straight face. He looked at Mitsuya fearlessly. What he meant was, "Do whatever you want. It's too late." You bastard." Mitsuya was so angry that she couldn't speak. She glared at Hayakuya Yuichiro. If it weren't for the fact that they were surrounded by strong enemies, she really wanted to beat this dumb kid up. During this time Mitsuya objected to saving the little girl. She wasn't a new recruit like Hyakuya Yuichiro. She knew that this could be a trap set by the vampires. She tried to stop him, but Hyakuya Yuichiro refused to listen. He decisively led everyone into the trap. As a result, they were now in such a difficult situation. They were a team of 5, but there were 7 vampires. They were at a disadvantage. As for the other members, Jun Tsukasa, Shifeng, Zhao Yuichi, and the team leader Ran Xiaoya, they were all frowning. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2376. From the perspective of teamwork, Hyakuya Yuichiro's actions were reckless. He did not care about the safety of his teammates and put the whole team in a difficult situation. This was a big taboo. However, from the perspective of human nature, Hyakuya Yuichiro did not do anything wrong. Humans are not plants. How can they be heartless? Moreover, as a member of the Emperor's Ghost Army, how can they watch the vampires kill their comrades without doing anything? Obviously this was impossible. No one could accept it. Therefore Sasuya Yuichiro did not blame Hyakuya Yuichiro. It was understandable. He was just a little impulsive. Yuichiro and Miyoshi, now is not the time to quarrel. We might be annihilated by this group of vampires at any time. So please stop. Sasuya Yuichiro advised, but her eyes were looking at the vampires to prevent them from launching a sneak attack. Just domestic animals. You have guts. You dare to fight among yourselves when you are about to die. Are you looking down on us? The vampires surrounding Sasuya Yuichiro and the others mocked them. They looked at Sasuya Yuichiro and the others with disdain. Humans will always be humans. Stupid and ignorant. At this time you still dare to fight among yourselves. Your dirty nature is disgusting. What did you say? Hearing this, Hyakuya Yuichiro was furious. He looked at the vampire angrily and unsheathed the long sword in his hand. Clang. A dark green blade appeared, revealing its sharpness. Just looking at it would cause one's eyes to hurt. It was not difficult to see that this was definitely a divine weapon. Even if Aijiramaru was taken away by Dustless, Hyakuya Yuichiro still got a good Black Ghost series Ghost Curse weapon. Go to hell, damn vampire. Staring at the vampire's face, Yuichiro Hyakuya roared. Holding the sword with both hands, he leaped forward and chopped at the hateful face. Every time Hyakuya Yuichiro saw a vampire, he could not help but think of his dead family members. Especially the face of Hyakuya Michael, which appeared in his mind and tormented him. Ah, idiot, you fell for it. Seeing Yuichiro pouncing on another vampire, the rest of the vampires' faces lit up. They looked at Yuichiro mockingly. This kid was really an idiot. He couldn't be provoked at all. Idiot, excellent. Come back quickly, there's a flaw in our formation. Seeing that Yuichiro Hyakuya was like a ferocious tiger coming out of its cage and pouncing over with unstoppable momentum, Sasuke Xiaoya's pretty face was covered with dark clouds. She hurriedly reprimanded Yuichiro Hyakuya to come back and maintain the formation. The Moon Ghost unit of the Emperor Ghost Army was usually a team of 5. They formed a special formation that could both attack and defend. In a dangerous situation, their chances of survival would also increase. However, if one person was missing, they would be full of openings. This is our chance. Let's go. These vampires seemed to be quite familiar with the Moon Phantoms. When they discovered a flaw in the formation, they immediately launched a fierce attack. Clang, clang, clang. This group of vampires was quite smart. They waved their swords and slashed at Sasuke and the rest. The situation instantly became chaotic. After all, these people were just children. Moreover, they were all new recruits. They were definitely not as good as these experienced vampires. Although they were quite strong, they had already been separated. It was no different from a fool's dream to continue maintaining the team. Moreover, the vampires had an obvious advantage in terms of numbers. Other than that, they also had a large number of captive humans. At the crucial moment, they could use them as hostages. No matter how one looked at it, Sasuke's team did not have an advantage. Bang bang bang. At the same time, Yuichiro Hyakuya was also fighting with a vampire. This kid's strength was indeed extraordinary. He was able to suppress the vampire to a miserable state. Every time he swung his sword, the vampire would be forced to retreat. This damned monster, why is he so strong? Is he really a child? The vampire who was being suppressed was aghast. To be suppressed by a child, he felt that he had lost all his face. To him it was a great humiliation, but he was powerless to fight back. Go to hell. Yuichiro Hayakuya's eyes were red. He was enjoying the pleasure of trampling on the vampire. He raised his right arm and waved his sword fiercely. The strength was as strong as the giant clan. One had to admit that although hatred was a negative side, it was sometimes a good thing. At least, it had become the motivation for Yuichiro Hayakuya to become stronger. Benkaka. The vampire immediately used his sword to block Yuichiro Hayakuya's attack. Although he managed to block the destruction of the sword, his weapon was also broken. It was enough to show how strong Yuichiro Hayakuya was. Damn monster. The vampire suddenly had an idea. Looking at the imprisoned humans around him, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Without saying a word, the vampire turned into a shadow and grabbed the throat of a child at lightning speed. He threatened Yuichiro Hayakuya, "Put down your weapon or I will kill him." Despicable. Are all vampires trash like you? You can't beat me, so you use others to threaten me. Shameless. Yuichiro Hayakuya cursed. He had never seen such a shameless person. Are you going to put it down or not? And your companions? The vampire didn't care. He smiled arrogantly and said proudly, "All of you put down your weapons. Otherwise we will kill this group of livestock. Your mission will be considered a failure." I have never seen such a shameless person. Yuichiro Hayakuya and the others were furious. The vampire was indeed extremely sinister. This is interesting. How are you going to choose? On the top of the ruined building, Dustless looked at the few people fighting on the ground. He gradually became interested. He really wanted to see what kind of decision Yuichiro Hayakuya would make. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2377. Only in moments of life and death would one do something unexpected. This was the best time to see through a person's true nature. Throw away your weapons or else. The vampire's eyes turned cold and he snapped the neck of a child. He then said with a bloodthirsty smile, "Don't doubt my words. This is just the beginning. Do you understand? If you resist, I will kill all of these animals." Plop. Immediately after, the vampire threw the corpse to the side without looking back, as if he was throwing away trash. In this world where human lives were as cheap as grass, it was normal for people to die. People died every day, especially to the vampires. What were humans? It was just the value of livestock. ****. Yuichiro Hayakuya's face turned pale as he looked at the body on the ground. The child's eyes were wide open as if he was unwilling to die. "I won't be fooled." Yuichiro Hayakuya exhaled heavily as if he had thought it through. He then said coldly, "If I put down my weapons, my companions will die too. I can't ignore the lives of my companions because of other people's lives." "Pfft. What a hypocrite. Didn't you say that you wanted to protect these animals? What about now? Humans are really shameless. You change your attitude faster than flipping a book." The other vampires were full of contempt. However, Yuichiro Hayakuya seemed to have sealed his emotions. He was expressionless and just looked at them coldly. "They won't die in vain. As a reward, I will tear you vampires into pieces to avenge them." Yuichiro Hayakuya's face was ferocious, as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. This is so boring. I was so excited to watch it. The ending is so disappointing. Seeing this scene, Wuxia, who was silently observing, shook his head and leisurely turned around to leave. He originally thought that Yuichiro Hayakuya would sacrifice himself to save the other humans, but it seemed that he was wrong. Although Yuichiro Hayakuya was rather simple and ignorant, he was not stupid. "Come out." Dustless had only taken a few steps when he suddenly looked up at the blue sky. His voice was as light as a breeze. "Akatsuki Ikanase, if you continue to hide in your turtle shell, I don't mind treating you like a vampire. That would be very interesting." These words are really scary. A languid voice suddenly rang out from one of the walls behind the ruins. Raising her head, Ikanase Korea rubbed her head in pain and sighed. As expected of the Golden Reaper that the vampires fear. His keen perception is truly terrifying. "I thought I had hidden myself well enough. You didn't come here just to catch up with me, did you?" Dustless asked faintly. "You've hidden it well enough. It's just that you're full of flaws in front of me. It's just that it's good enough because you're purely fantasizing. It's extremely vulgar. Hearing Dustless's words, Ikane's Korea felt rather awkward. However, she was a thick-skinned person. That only lasted for a moment before she quickly returned to normal. Of course, I'm not here to catch up with you. The vampires are about to launch an all-out war against the humans. I'm here to ask you about your stance. Ikane's Korea went straight to the point. As for the trivial matters of Yuichiro Hayakuya and the others, Ikane's Korea did not interfere. If they could not even deal with those small vampire minions, then it would be better for them to die as soon as possible. Pai stance. Hearing this, Dustless fixed his gaze on Ikane's Korea's head and calmly asked, "That's a strange way to put it. I am the general of the Imperial Ghost Army. Of course, I'm on the side of the humans. What other stance can I have?" That's not necessarily true. Ikane's Korea stared straight at Dustless. No one knew about his past, but she knew a little about it. At the very least, Ikane's Korea had some clues about what Dustless had done in the vampire city. You suspect that I will side with the vampires? What a joke. A thief trying to catch a thief. Dustless focused his gaze on Ikane's Korea and coldly said, "Also before that, you better be clear about the difference in status between us. I am the general. What is your military rank?" After saying that, Dustless ignored Ikane's Korea and turned to leave. The meaning behind his words was simple. You have no right to talk to me. I heard that you went to the vampire's territory and caused quite a ruckus. Ikane's Korea suddenly looked at Dustless and said. Ikane's Korea was inextricably linked to the vampires. Naturally, she had received the news that Dustless had caused a huge ruckus in the vampire's territory. I was just bored and went for a stroll. Dustless did not even look at Ikane's Korea. His footsteps did not slow down. Gradually, Ikane's Korea's eyes caught up with him. Stroll. The corners of Ikane's Korea's mouth twitched. She felt depressed. A human going for a stroll in the vampire's territory? What kind of joke was this? Did he have a death wish? In Ikane's Korea's opinion, Dustless was deliberately trying to brush her off. He must be up to something big. This fellow, just what is he after? Ikane's Korea was confused. She looked at Dustless's back and her mind fell into a dead end. She had studied Dustless for many years. However, she had never been able to figure out what kind of character this fellow was. She could not even figure out what his ambitions and goals were. However, no matter what, as long as you dare to stand in my way, I will not let you off so easily. Ikane's Korea stared deeply at Dustless's back and swore to herself. If Dustless were to find out about this, he would definitely ridicule her for overestimating herself. However, Ikane's Korea dared to say such words because she was confident in herself. In her eyes, the blazing angel of termination was an invincible existence. Her research with the Twilight Tribe had reached its final stage. The blazing angel could be put to use at any time. This might be her biggest trump card against Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 rewards plus update, 1,000 rating votes plus update, 500 rating votes plus update. Chapter 2378. The Blazing Angel Project had once destroyed the world and humans were unable to resist it. Therefore Haines Hongren also had high hopes for that thing, thinking that it could defeat Dustless. Although it was a little childish to have such thoughts, it was normal. After all, no one knew Dustless's origin. At the same time, Dustless continued to move forward. The defense of Shinjuku was about to begin and both sides would fight to the death. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he might as well go and take a look. In the desolate city there was obviously a big battle. Black smoke was still burning and many vampires could be seen everywhere, as well as the corpses of the King Ghost Army. There was no doubt that the King Ghost Army had been defeated. The streets and alleys had become a paradise for vampires. During this time, many vampires had even come to surround Dustless. Look, there's another human. Let's kill him together. You idiot, don't you see who that is? The nightmare of us vampires. I remember that his name is Dustless and his nickname is the Golden Reaper. He's the only general in the King Ghost Army. So what? I heard that the reward for killing him is great. Idiot, even if the reward is great, you need to be alive to take it. Anyway, the higher-ups said that we can run away without fighting if we see this guy. We won't be blamed. Dustless swaggered into the city, causing many vampires to look at each other. A group of vampires who could not resist the temptation went to provoke him, but the result was very tragic. They were killed instantly. However, some vampires who had heard of Dustless's reputation decisively chose to ignore him. This was because there was an order that they would not be blamed even if they ran away to avoid punishment. Over the years, Dustless's reputation was too well known, and he was feared by countless vampires. Moreover, he had a habit that everyone knew: he was often alone and he usually traveled alone. The word companion was completely opposite to him, and he was completely different from the other King Ghost Army members. It was precisely because of this that a noble once led thousands of vampires to besiege Dustless when he was alone. The result was shocking and the vampires were all wiped out. Therefore various nicknames of Dustless spread. At least you know what's good for you. Dustless naturally sensed many vampires, but found that they did not provoke or meddle in other people's business. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Although Dustless said that he was a human that was only on the surface, he had always regarded himself as a neutral. Neither vampires nor humans were good people. Sometimes when he saw vampires and Emperor Ghost Army fighting, Dustless was too lazy to intervene. It's really as strange as the rumors say. At this moment a slightly surprised voice was heard. Dustless stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him, a vampire suddenly walked out. From his attire one could tell that he was a noble. Scram. Dustless spoke indifferently without even glancing at the man. Hearing this, many vampires were speechless. This fellow had barged into the vampire's lair alone and even told the vampire nobles to scram. He was simply tired of living, treating his life as a joke. This temper is just as the rumors say, arrogant. The vampire who blocked Dustless's path laughed. It would have been better if he did not speak. Once he spoke, he revealed two sharp teeth looking rather eerie. However, to everyone's surprise, the vampire didn't get angry despite being looked down upon by Dustless. Instead, he introduced himself politely. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Corey Justford, the 13th ancestor, and also, didn't you hear me when I asked you to scram? Dustless could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He showed an expression that said it was for his own good. I asked you to scram for your own good. Otherwise, I'll have another vampire noble dead soul under my hands. Gulp, gulp. Many vampires looked at each other, choking with sobs. A human intruding into the vampire's territory alone and still being so arrogant. This really refreshed their understanding of him. Don't be in such a hurry. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'm also here for business. Corey was not angry. He had long heard of Dustless's temper. You're not even half as smart as Freed. I don't think he ordered you to come. That kid was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw me. I didn't need to say anything and he would have run for his life. Dustless muttered to himself as if he was narrating a trivial matter. However, the other vampires were sweating profusely. A mouse seeing a cat? This description was too exaggerated. Forget it. Just say it. I'm bored anyway. Remember to get me a chair. My waist is not good. It gets sore after listening to people talk for a long time. Dustless waved his hand and looked like he was all ears. Will this guy die if he doesn't be so arrogant? Many vampires complained collectively. How could a human be so arrogant, as if he was a high and mighty master? There were even some vampires who were yelling in their hearts, Mr. Livestock. But what surprised them was that in the face of Dustless's arrogant words, Corey's expression did not change. The corners of his mouth even curled up slightly and he seemed to be very calm. This guy seems to be up to something. Dustless's gaze suddenly deepened. He didn't feel Corey's hostility and surprisingly tolerated his humiliation. This showed that he definitely had an ulterior motive. All of you back off. Looking at the vampires around him, Corey's gaze suddenly turned piercingly cold. A fight between me and this guy isn't something you can handle. Also listen to him. Hurry up and get me a chair. Upon hearing his words, the vampires felt like their minds were about to explode. Is this a fight? Does he need to get someone a chair for a fight? This is obviously the rhythm of kneeling and begging for mercy. Some of the vampires had even imagined the scene of Corey kneeling on one knee. P.S. I'm back in my hometown. I can't update steadily while in the car. Please forgive me. Chapter 2379. The weather was chilly and the air was a little humid. The cold wind blew gently, but it was exceptionally bone-piercing. Strange, it was fine just now. Why is it suddenly so cold? The vampires were confused and couldn't help but look at each other. Their race was rather special. But they had never felt such a simple feeling before. After all, the excellent physique of the vampires far surpassed that of humans. But now they felt a bone-piercing chill. This was really strange. "Oh, this is really amazing." On the other side, Corey's eyes widened in shock. He raised his head and saw a huge crack on the ground that extended all the way to Dustless's feet. That skinny body was like a natural barrier that no one was able to cross. "Let me re-evaluate your IQ." Dustless sat lazily on the chair and rubbed his chin in boredom. "Corey, although you look like a frivolous and half-hearted man on the surface, in reality I'm very smart, right?" Corey smiled and continued. Dustless shook the thumb of his right hand and said coldly, "In reality you are really stupid. You want to sneak up on me with your level?" Just a moment ago, the moment Dustless sat on the chair, Corey suddenly launched a sneak attack on him. The move was so powerful that even the ground was cut open, creating a huge and terrifying abyss. However, the sad thing was that it had no effect on Dustless. That seemingly powerful slash was directly caught by his bare hands and was easily crushed like a fruit. "You said I'm stupid?" Corey frowned and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. "Isn't that so? Challenging someone who can crush you, if this isn't stupid, what is?" Looking into Corey's blood-red eyes, Dustless asked indifferently. At the same time, his hand suddenly grabbed forward. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Boom boom boom. A violent gravitational force erupted instantly, distorting space and time and destroying the land. A large number of buildings were pulled over. That pair of slender white hands seemed to be the hand of God that could not be defied. The gravitational force covered everything indiscriminately and no matter could escape its fate. "Is this a move that humans can control?" Corey cursed loudly. At this moment his body was also floating uncontrollably. He found it difficult to maintain his balance with his four limbs and floated in the air like a puppet. Moreover, he was constantly approaching Dustless. As long as Dustless moved his finger slightly, his body would sway along with it. This feeling was especially sullen and helpless. He had lost control of his body all of a sudden. Dustless could control Crowley however he wished. "Sword, drink my blood." At this critical moment, Corey decisively used all of his power, the sword at his waist suddenly piercing into his palm, the two becoming one. From this moment onwards he displayed his full strength. The blade that was suffused with silver light also turned blood red. Its luster was as demonic as blood. Swish, swish, swish. He abruptly waved his hand and a huge crimson beam of light shot toward him. "Tise, you barely have some skill." Dustless chuckled and ignored the slash coming at him. He looked at Crowley calmly and said, "You're the 13th ancestor, aren't you? However, the strength you're displaying now reminds me of someone. Do you know who it is?" Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, Crowley's full-powered attack landed on Dustless's body. It was also in this split second that a layer of visible materialized energy swept out of Dustless's body and revolved around him tightly like a water bucket protecting Dustless. Crowley's slash was completely absorbed by this golden energy. "What the hell is this?" Crowley looked at Dustless in shock and bewilderment. The layer of light outside his body was similar to an enlarged version of human bones. It was so sturdy that it was difficult to break through. His full-powered attack was like hitting a diamond. Forget about breaking it, it did not even leave a mark. There's nothing to be surprised about. This is my consistent. Although it's incomplete, it's not something you can break. Come to think of it, I used this move to destroy thousands of vampires back then. Dustless's eyes were somewhat empty, as if he had sunk into his memories and muttered to himself. "Get over here." The big hand suddenly grabbed again and the gravitational force erupting from the palm was even denser. Crowley's body disappeared in an instant, and only a black shadow could be seen pouncing toward Dustless. "Pay some price for your stupidity." The moment he approached, Dustless suddenly sent out a kick. Bang! Crowley only felt that his face had received a fatal attack. The bones in his face were shattered with a caw-caw-caw sound. Dustless stepped on his face, causing him to grimace in pain. "Spare me. If I knew you were so terrifying, I wouldn't have dared to come to a place like Japan." Crowley, whose cheek had been stepped on, laughed bitterly at himself. His words were a little muffled because Dustless had also stepped on his mouth. There's always a price to pay for provoking others. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. As one of the ancestors of the vampires, you should know how many nobles have died in my hands. But you still came to provoke me. What does this mean? Dustless was not in a hurry. His tone paused for a while and then he said unhurriedly, "This situation can only mean two things. Either you're really tired of living or you're deliberately approaching me. Right, let's talk about that question again. On the surface, you're the 13th ancestor, but your true strength is far beyond this level. Compared to that guy Fried, whose blood did you drink? I think it's that second ancestor. I think he's called Saito. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2380. Saito. To many people this was an extremely unfamiliar name. Even some vampires did not know him. The number of people who knew about this person could be counted with one's fingers. It was worth mentioning that Saito had retired from the position of the second primogenitor several hundred years ago. It was normal for people to not know about him. However, Crowley was one of the few people who knew about Saito. Several hundred years ago during the Middle Ages, Crowley was still a human. Surprisingly, he was also a knight. At that time he drank a special blood that caused his body to undergo a qualitative change. Because of that he became a vampire. The person who gave him the blood was freed. However, the blood was not his. Instead it was the blood of the second primogenitor, a man named Saito. It was worth mentioning that Fried also drank Saito's blood. The two of them could be considered brothers. However, regardless of whether it was Fried or Crowley, neither of them had any good impression of Saito. They wanted nothing more than to get rid of him. Ayaya, you are truly incredible. You even know about such a major secret. How terrifying. Crowley said casually as he carelessly rubbed his head. He looked very frivolous, but in reality his heart was raging like a storm, filled with shock and astonishment. This sort of thing, who told him about it? Was it Fried? That shouldn't be the case. Although that guy is unreliable, he at least understands the severity of certain things being exposed. He will definitely be killed. Crowley scratched his head and pondered. Suddenly he felt as if the world no longer revolved around vampires. What do you mean by waiting for the beginning? Since when have humans become so smart? Furthermore, it was such a secretive matter. It seemed that other than him and Fried, no one else knew that he had drunk Saito's blood. Everyone else thought that Crowley had drunk Fried's blood. But where did Dustless obtain this information? This was too puzzling. Seeing your confused expression, it means that what I said is true. Dustless's tone was as calm as water. There was not the slightest fluctuation in his voice. No one could tell what he was thinking. There is one thing that I must admit. You are truly terrifying. Crowley took a deep look at Dustless. He felt as if he was looking at flowers through a fog. He discovered that he was unable to see through this person. This person of unknown origin, powerful strength and capable of suppressing all nobles, and a human at that, was undoubtedly terrifying. Especially if one offended him. Looks like you have nothing to say. Dustless suddenly stood up and moved his bones a little. A crackling sound came out, giving people the feeling that he was about to beat someone up. Damn it, I can't afford to offend this guy. Raising his head abruptly to look at Dustless, Crowley was filled with regret. Especially when he heard the caw-caw-caw sound from the handshake, he broke out in cold sweat. He felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. Buzz buzz buzz. In that instant, Dustless abruptly raised his right foot, condensing a huge flash of light and aiming at Crowley's body. A blazing edge of destruction immediately spread out. Light speed. Hold on. Seeing that Dustless was about to launch a kick at him, Crowley hurriedly waved his hand to stop Dustless. He hurriedly explained in a loud voice, "To tell you the truth, it was Fried who sent me to look for you. It was all a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Hearing that, the light that was ignited by Wu Chen's right foot slowly extinguished. Wu Chen frowned slightly and fixed his gaze on Corey's face. He asked, "He should understand my strength. It's impossible for him to allow you to provoke me. You're just asking for trouble." "Yes, that's what he told me. But," Crowley's tone sank slightly as he said solemnly, "however, this is a serious matter. I still can't completely trust you humans. Moreover, I also have doubts about your strength. He's sorry to offend you. At this point Crowley's tone was incomparably awkward. He scratched his head in embarrassment. He wanted to test Dustless, but the result was too horrible to look at. He was crushed by that terrifying absolute strength. I think there's too big of a misunderstanding. After a moment of silence, Dustless slowly said, "First of all, although you're a vampire, your essence is still human. It's really laughable to say that you don't trust humans. Secondly," Dustless's tone softened, his gaze unwavering as he looked at Crowley. "I think you're mistaken. From what you said, you want to discuss something with me. Did I agree? The next question is..." Dustless's tranquil gaze instantly turned awe-inspiring, revealing a murderous intent. "Test my strength? Yes, but I forgot to tell you that you'll have to pay a price." Boom boom boom. As his voice faded, the extinguished light under Dustless's feet flashed again. Moreover, it was even brighter and more ear-piercing than before. The flash was as terrifyingly hot as the sun. This bastard. Upon seeing this, Crowley's pupils shrunk abruptly as he sensed an unprecedented crisis. Without looking back, he lifted his head and retreated at the fastest speed in his life. Although Crowley's reaction was extremely fast, he was still a step too late. After all, the speed of light was too fast. Compared to the speed of light, the speed of a vampire was simply not worth mentioning. He was so weak that he was instantly engulfed by the destructive light wave. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. The golden light beam tore through the horizon and pounced straight at Crowley's body. Intense, blazing flames instantly soared into the air and burned wildly in the atmosphere. Due to the overly ferocious flames, even the sky turned red. The oxygen and moisture in the atmosphere evaporated rapidly. Could be suffocating at any time. It was extremely dangerous. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2381. Gulp. Gulp. Seeing such a scene, Corey could not help but jump in fright. He had never seen such an exaggerated scene before. It had even subverted his understanding of the world. It was no wonder that Corey's performance was so exaggerated. It looked like a simple kick, but the destructive power it unleashed was beyond imagination. "I know I'm wrong, please let me go." Helpless, Crowley could only beg for mercy. His tone was humble and full of pleading, completely losing the noble character of a superior vampire. This submissive begging tone was more like that of a prisoner. "Lord Corey, fight him to the death." Some of the vampires who could not stand it any longer roared, endless anger brewing in their words. Since when could a lowly human step on the heads of vampires and flaunt their prowess? Heavens, this is too much. However, Corey's performance was truly unflattering, even shameful. They did not dare to swing their swords. "Stop, let's talk things over." Corey hid behind a pile of rubble and shouted at Dustless. Sadly, he was ignored. Dustless did not even look at Corey from start to finish, as if he was a pawn that was not worth mentioning. Boom, boom, boom. The thick beam of light blasted onto Crowley's body, followed by an explosion. Endless shockwaves spread out, blowing the ground bare. Even the sand and stones underground were blown up, exposing the moist depths of the ground to the scorching sun. As for Corey, you shouldn't be dead, right? The power of that kick was shocking, but vampires are a special race. Seems that only ghost curse equipment can destroy you. Dustless lowered his head and said beside a crater. Beneath his feet was Corey. No, calling him Corey was not the truth. Only Corey's head was left beneath Dustless's feet. As for the rest of his body, they were all dismembered. Although he did not directly kill him, the feeling of being dismembered was unforgettable. Your Excellency must be joking. Even if you don't use ghost curse equipment, you can still easily destroy vampires. This is a well-known fact among us vampires. Corey said with a fake smile. He was extremely sullen in his heart. The main culprit who had chopped him into 8 pieces was right in front of him, but he didn't even have the courage to challenge him. No, he had already challenged Dustless just now, but the result was that he was now in such a miserable state. It's still effective. Hearing that, Dustless's lips curled into a smirk that deserved a beating. He muttered to himself casually, "Crowley, actually, I'm not afraid of you being angry. I just feel that if I beat all of you vampires up, you'll be smarter when you talk, right?" Corey was like this back then. Thinking back to the first time we met, he even said that he wanted to capture me and turn me into livestock. After I beat him up, he became very obedient. Dustless was boringly recounting the past, but Corey was quivering as he listened. It was undeniable that after being taught such a harsh lesson by Dustless, he was much better at speaking than before. At the very least, he did not put on airs and put on airs. No matter what, he would talk after he beat him up and let him understand his own identity and position. This was Dustless's method. It was very direct and rude, but it was undeniable that this method was very effective. At the very least, it made Corey obedient. Do you understand yourself better now? Dustless's eyes were still cold and his words were also very cold. I understand. Corey's face was bitter. His body had already been dismembered. How could he not understand? He was still alive not because he was lucky. Corey knew that Dustless did not intend to kill him for the time being. Alright, cut the crap. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Dustless casually sat on a rock and leisurely swung his legs. His tone and attitude were very frivolous. It's very simple. You've already said it before. Corey took a deep look at Dustless and said with a bitter tone, you should also understand that although I'm the 13th primogenitor on the surface, my true strength is only that of the 7th primogenitor. To kill the 2nd primogenitor Saito. That kind of monster is impossible for me to defeat. Towards the end, Crowley's tone was extremely sorrowful, revealing a sense of helplessness and desolation. This was the powerlessness of the weak. Facing a vampire of a higher level, he simply had no strength to resist and would be instantly killed. What you said is the truth. After staring at Corey for a while, Dustless nodded slightly. As a transmigrator, he knew that what Corey said was the truth. Saito was indeed freed and Corey's father. However, the two of them did not have a good impression of this father. They even wanted to take Sato's head immediately. As for the deep hatred between them, Dustless was not interested. That was the problem between the two of them, father and son. I understand now. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless looked directly into Corey's eyes with his shining eyes. It was as if he could see through one's mind, causing one to not dare to look into his eyes. You want me to kill Saito, right? I can do that, but what benefits will I get? If I remember correctly, Freed seems to be working with the humans. He wants to use the Seraph of Termination to kill Saito, right? You bastard. After hearing Dustless's words, Corey's heart trembled. The person in front of him knew and understood far more than he imagined. Even some top-secret plans that Corey did not know about were known to Dustless. Humans are unreliable. Corey suddenly shook his head and said in a self-deprecating manner, in the eyes of humans, vampires are very dangerous and terrifying. But perhaps they don't know that in the eyes of vampires, humans are even more dangerous and terrifying. Who can be sure that those humans who control the Seraph of Termination will help us? Everything has to be prepared, don't you think so? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.